Hello and welcome to the College Countdown FAFSA Event Toolkit webinar. So we're going to go over today everything that's included within the FAFSA Toolkit. But before we get started, let's go through some housekeeping rules for this webinar. This presentation is in webinar mode and it is being recorded. During the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A to ask questions. Utilize the chat feature if you want to address myself, Brandy Lindell, or Kirsten Dufour. A recording of the webinar will be shared with everyone tomorrow. So we thank you again for joining us for this webinar. So just briefly, let's talk a little bit about the history of College Countdown. It started back in 2005 in North Carolina, and it has now evolved into a 50-state campaign. And essentially, it encourages students to take their next steps towards college during their senior year. In Mississippi, 2013 was the first year that we had the campaign with only 16 participating schools, but it has now grown to over 180 schools participating. So thank you again for being a part of College Countdown and joining us today. The goal of College Countdown is for every graduating high school senior to have the opportunity to first apply to college in an application day event, complete the free application for federal student aid, and be recognized for their choice to attend some type of college, whether that be a 2-year college, a 4-year college, for military service, or a technical program. We want students to be celebrated during college signing day for any post-secondary plan they will pursue after high school graduation. So in case you haven't heard, in October of 2020, Mississippi Education Achievement Council passed a resolution to adopt a post-secondary attainment goal for Mississippi. Now we have two goals in the campaign: ascent to 55%. By 2030, Mississippi will increase post-secondary attainment of its workforce by 55%. And then by 2035, Mississippi will increase the post-secondary attainment of its workforce to 60%. We at College Countdown, and of course Get to College, are supporting the Ascent to 55% attainment goal. And you can find more information about this effort in your toolkit. Now, for those of you who have not yet registered your school for College Countdown, it is not too late. The deadline to register is September 15th. So you still have time if you have not yet registered your school. We do ask that schools register every year. So even if you registered last year, we want you to register again and tell us what events you plan to be offering this year. Kirsten did list and place the chat, the registration link. So make sure that you register before the deadline so that you'll be able to get all the great opportunities that come along with being a part of College Countdown.
And one of those great opportunities, if you register by September 15th, which is the priority deadline, is to be considered in the running for the School of Excellence. So we recognize top schools of excellence each year within the campaign for College Countdown. So a School of Excellence, to be eligible for consideration, must register by September the 15th each year and provide data by the deadlines. So application day has its own deadline, FAFSA, and then signing day. We also want to recognize our premier schools. The premier schools are schools that have registered and submitted data by the deadline. Whew, that's a mouthful. And they have will be considered for the School of Excellence recognition. So we hope you've all registered. If not, you haven't. We hope you do so by that September 15th deadline. So maybe we can see your school on this list next year. These are our schools of excellence from the 21-22 academic year. We want to take a moment and celebrate them for the hard work that they've done. Each one of these we have interviewed, and you'll find a collection of their advice to you as a site coordinator on our YouTube channel. They're also hyperlinked within the College Countdown Mississippi Toolkit. So for application day, we have Forest Hill High School. For a FAFSA challenge last year, we had Bay Springs High School, Coahoma County High School, Regent School of Oxford, and signing day was Meridian High School. We look forward to maybe seeing your school's name on this list next year and all the efforts that you've put forth in supporting College Countdown initiatives at your school. So if you're kind of wondering about the FAFSA challenge, since we're talking in the scope of FAFSAs today, let me share a little bit about this. So all high schools who register of College Countdown Mississippi and acknowledge to host a FAFSA completion event will be considered a participating high school in the challenge. This year, there's going to be only 2 challenge categories. It's a change from last year. The challenge categories for the 22-23 year are going to be recognition of the winners in the highest overall FAFSA completion and the highest FAFSA completion percentage increase. So if you're sitting here being like, I don't know if we could ever get the highest FAFSA completion, but if your school has a low FAFSA completion number, that could be something that highest FAFSA completion increase could be something that you could be really interested in. I know if you're interested in kind of hearing about some of these strategies that have been used, we were able to have Coahoma County High School site coordinator join us just a couple weeks ago, and that recording is on our YouTube channel from our new site coordinator training. And they talk a lot about being that highest FAFSA percent increase and what they were able to do and how they utilize data as well as the classroom to really get that number and utilizing the opportunity to work towards one goal as a group. And so the deadline for the challenge is March 31st of next year. So you have until then for your numbers. Remember, October 1 is when the FAFSA opens for the class of 23 until March 31st of 23. So we hope you the best in the challenge, and we look forward to seeing all of the great work that you do. And we hope to see your name on this list. These are all of our premier schools from last year. And so we want to acknowledge and celebrate them each time that we have the opportunity to do so. As a reminder, these are the schools that completed the registration by September 15th and then completed all of their data sets by the due dates. So we can't wait to see you listed in next year's webinar. So if you're wondering what exactly a FAFSA completion event is, also known as a FAFSA day, we wanted to kind of give you a breakdown if maybe you're new to this space or you've been voluntold to do this role recently. So a FAFSA day provides students and families with one-on-one assistance to complete the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, and also the Mississippi Aid application, the MAP. They link together, so it's really a natural thing to do both of them at the same time. The best FAFSA completion delivery format we really encourage should be determined by the school coordinator, the site coordinator on the specific school culture. So that may be, we'll talk about different formats of that, but we just kind of think about as you're planning this, what fits your school better, what time of day, should it be done in the classroom, should it be done at a parent night, should it be incorporated within a larger scale event, what is going to be able to get the most done for your students and your parents based off your school. One important thing to consider is timing is everything. So as we know, the FAFSA is available on October the 1st, and schools are encouraged to plan their FAFSA day as early as possible. This really allows the students more time to explore and understand their financial aid options and enough time to determine what is the best college that's affordable to them to attend. We don't want them to miss any of the deadlines, so it's important to know that March 31st is the goal that we have. You can see it with the challenge. That's the deadline for the FAFSA and Mississippi Aid application for the HELP grant, which is the grant that covers tuition and fees for students in Mississippi that meet the requirements. But also something to keep in mind is that there are some colleges that have deadlines as early as December the 1st, such as the University of Southern Mississippi. They require not only students to be admitted, but the FAFSA to be completed by December 1. So kind of thinking about that based off your student population, where they traditionally are enrolling or where they're considering, maybe where they have their application day event, applications go to make sure that you're planning those FAFSA days in a timely manner to allow them not to miss any of those deadlines. And that may mean that you have 2 application days or more. Maybe you have one in the fall and in the spring. We see oftentimes spring sometimes are more successful for those students who are maybe on the fence around enrolling. Maybe your college and career readiness class has an assignment where they have a cohort that go in the fall and a cohort that go in the spring. So kind of thinking about that implementation based off of your school. A national partner that supports FAFSA completion is the National College Attainment Network, NCAN. And they support with the increase of FAFSA completion. They manage the Form Your Future website, which provides national ranking of FAFSA completion by national. So says where the United States is as a nation in FAFSA completion by state. So ranks states amongst each other and even digs down within states to school districts. So if you're interested in that, Form Your Future is available. Of course, our website has a FAFSA tracker that's specific to Mississippi with comparison of year over year, which we'll look at that shortly. But we wanted to celebrate some encouraging news around FAFSA completion for Mississippi. So Form Your Future ranks state by state on FAFSA completion. As of this last Friday's data set, which there's probably going to be one more coming through since it's about 2 weeks delayed, Mississippi is ranked 4th. Yes, that is top 4 in the nation. So that is a great thing. There are 46 other states behind us in FAFSA completion. So we wanted to celebrate this for the good work that you all have done, and we will know you will continue to do for your students. So we're ranked 4th in the nation. We're at 67.4%. We will see if we get out to that 3rd spot within the next week. We have about one more data set to come through. Something to just acknowledge here, Louisiana does require FAFSA as a part of their graduation. They're not at 100%. There are waivers for students for various reasons. That's why they're not at 100. And Tennessee requires it as a part of their free community college, the Tennessee Promise. Washington, D.C. does not have a requirement, but is a very small community. So they have a lot more ways to impact that percentage there. So we wanted to celebrate Mississippi and all of the good work that you all have done. We would love to see 67.4% in March. So that way we know that students aren't missing that really lucrative help grant deadline, that they know they maximize those dollars. Like we talked about, timing is everything. So we challenge you to kind of think about earlier and better, but we're glad that they're getting done pretty much before school starts.
Thanks, Kirsten. You know, she really went into why FAFSA is important and how Mississippi has been moving with FAFSA completion, but you don't have to go it alone. So please don't feel overwhelmed with FAFSA Day or FAFSA event planning. We have created a step-by-step toolkit of resources that can help you have a successful, fabulous day that can help Mississippi stay at ranking of number 4 or even go higher this next year. So we're going to go through this toolkit and we're happy to answer any questions or concerns that you have. Be sure to utilize the Q&A and the chat feature if you want additional clarification. So let's get started. When you're looking to create a FAFSA culture within your school, it's important to think about what all goes into creating that college culture. And we have tried our best to talk to site coordinators just like yourself to hear directly from them. And we have within the toolkit FAFSA Day planning advice from West Harrison High School site coordinator. And we think that you will get a great deal of information from this video so that you can have your best FAFSA world at your school. Step 1 is by far one of the most important steps, I think, because we don't expect you to do it all by yourself. Create a team. Make sure that you are relying on people that you work with within the school building and possibly outside of the school building and create a FAFSA team so that you are working with multiple hands to help students complete the FAFSA and that you're not doing it all on your own. That could mean identifying between 8 to 10 high school staff. It could be CCR teachers, graduation coaches, career coaches, school counselors, administrators, senior class teachers, the senior sponsor. But you're basically looking for people who support students by completing the FAFSA. And who better to help them than the people who are with them every single day? And to help them with, okay, I filed the FAFSA, but what happens next? Assisting them throughout the entire way will make a huge deal of comfort for not only you, but the student as well. And then it's important to hold informational and planning meetings for your FAFSA team, making sure that everyone's on the same page and that they know what's happening within the school and when and how the events are being planned and what their role is within their FAFSA team. And you may already know that Get to College, we do a great deal of training. And we have multiple training opportunities. You can schedule FAFSA training for your team with Get to College. Kirsten Dufour here, my co-presenter, she leads all of that. And so you will be highly trained and highly successful to help file the FAFSA if you attend our FAFSA training. Now, here are the offerings for just this fall for FAFSA training. We have 2 virtual FAFSA trainings that you can participate in, and we have throughout the state finally back in-person trainings. And so if you're close to any of these cities or regions, we highly encourage you to participate. Make sure that you register on our website for either the virtual or the in-person training. We'd love to have you. And then step 2, you've built your team. Now you actually need to plan and execute the day. And it's important that you review the best practices for FAFSA Day. I think Kirsten and I both have participated in enough FAFSA days that we can definitely tell you the best and worst ways to do it. And so you want to make sure that you are following the best practices, because it'll not only make it easier on your students and parents, it'll make it easier on your school as well. A large scale FAFSA day, we have a whole planning process guide for you. And that's where you essentially are supporting a big day event where you're trying to help as many students as possible during that day. Now, event promotion is very important. You not only do you need to promote it throughout your high school within your team and your volunteers that are going to help with the FAFSA that day, but also with students, because we know that certain criteria is necessary for them to file the FAFSA. And so we need them to bring documentation. They will most likely need something and need to prepare for the FAFSA day. It's not a best practice to kind of show up and wing it on a FAFSA day. So the appointment scheduling and making sure that students are prepared, as well as parents are notified about a FAFSA day, is very important, and that will help you make a successful day for you and for the students and parents. And making sure that your date is set so that you are creating an opportunity for your students that work best. I know a lot of students or a lot of schools will say, when should I have my FAFSA day? It really depends on what will work best for your community. And so knowing your school will make a huge difference. In addition to looking over our FAFSA frequently asked questions document, we have gone through and tried to think of all of the questions we receive and put the answers so that maybe if others are asking these questions, you're able to quickly find the answers and plan your day so that it makes it easier for everyone in your planning process. So you have reviewed your best practices, you've looked over the frequently asked questions, and we want you to set a FAFSA completion goal for this coming year. And you might say, well, I don't even know what my goal is for this year. Get to College provides a FAFSA tracker, and you can look and see what your FAFSA completion rate is not in real time, but almost real time. It's within 2 weeks of the current date. And so you can go on our website to the Mississippi High School FAFSA tracker, and you can see what your FAFSA completion percentage is right now for the class of 2022. And it will compare it to your FAFSA completion data from last year. And so beginning October 1st, or probably October 15th, we will be able to have a brand new FAFSA tracker to include the class of 2023, so that you can look at your FAFSA numbers and you can track them all year long, so that you know what your goal is, how to set it, and then be able to track it throughout the year. When you're looking for your best date and time for your FAFSA completion event, as I mentioned, think about your student population. What works for your parents and students? Are they able to come to the school during school hours? Do you need to have something in the evening? Also consider your volunteers, your FAFSA completion team. If you're going to use community college volunteers, think about when might be best for them and how are they able to assist you through your day. Try to make sure you have not only volunteers and people power for your FAFSA event, but make sure you have supplies as well. It's going to be necessary for you to have a computer lab or computers available. You're going to need to have pens and paper, and making sure that students are able to keep track of all the usernames and passwords that are being created for FAFSA. So make sure that you're keeping set of all your supplies, and you'll be ready to go on to step 3.
All right, so your data set, you have your team, you're ready to promote the event to your community. So make sure that you begin with having your students and families aware of just what the FAFSA is. There are a lot of myths and there's a lot of misconceptions around the FAFSA. And so it's important and to have a successful FAFSA day with parent engagement, which is very critical for students to complete the FAFSA. I have seen time and time again, those schools that take the extra effort to do more education around the FAFSA will have a better FAFSA completion attendance event for their students. And so if you're like, I am not a FAFSA expert, I do not know even how to talk about it, don't worry. We've got those resources for you in the toolkit. So we've created graphics that you can post on social media. You can print them. You can put them in newsletters. You can text them in Remind 101. You can put them in your Canvas, whatever way that you communicate to students and to parents, you can put this there. We've got some really cool ones. So these are some examples of what's in that link in the toolkit. You can see that there's some quick FAFSA facts that kind of debunk some of the myths. We've got a reminder that the application opens after October the 1st. And we've got like close to 50 to 75 of these FAFSA tips that are there. That if you wanted to do an entire series of graphics around building awareness on the FAFSA, there's a very large series within this social media toolkit that's linked that you can use on whatever platform to build awareness. If you wanted to use it in the classroom, if you want to do it on your announcements, whatever that is. So know that there's a lot of resources to build that education piece. It's important to make sure that the families know those common myths that are around it. It's not a credit check. If they're not required to file taxes, they absolutely can file. So kind of go through some of those graphics, even if you want to build your announcements around what those are. But don't worry, Get to College has also provided you a template with school announcements that can be used in automatic dialing or text communication during sporting events. You can get a lot of families' information out to them at those football games, right, on Friday nights. Maybe it is the decision maker in the family you're going to get no other way but at the football game on Friday. So that's kind of something to think about. In the toolkit is linked to these exact examples to where it's a Word doc. So you can add in your date, you can add in the point of contact person, you can add in, there's a different person making appointments, or maybe it's going to be done within your college and career readiness class. So maybe you want to build that awareness of like when your students ask for the tax documents and for you to be available, on Thursday at 10 a.m., they understand kind of what's happening and why that's occurring. So we've got a shorter announcements. We've got larger announcements if you want to put it in the local newspaper, website, newsletter, if you want to put it on the Facebook page, if that's a great way to get in touch with your parents. So know that promotional piece is there, as well as some posters that help you can hang around the school, build awareness not only about the FAFSA, but also about the HELP grant, which is that grant that is based on families' financial income and the some grade requirements, some ACT requirements, but it pays for tuition and fees that are public 2-year and 4-year colleges in Mississippi. But also to go along with that, we've got the types of degrees poster, which is really a great one to explain and create that college culture within your school. And maybe something that you want to not only promote at FAFSA days, but at your application days, it talks about a certificate versus an associate versus a bachelor's versus a master's versus a PhD type of setup. So those are all available for you to download, for you to print, for you to put on digital media as you see fit. We've also got a really great YouTube channel for College Countdown. Most of College Countdown is intended for you as a site coordinator as resources, but Get to College also has a really great channel that's really geared more towards students and education as resources. And so on the YouTube channel, you may want to incorporate this as a bell ringer. You may want to send it out to your students and parents to build that awareness. We've got a whole FAFSA playlist. We've got walkthrough tutorials that will be updated for the 23-24 FAFSA that opens on October the 1st at the end of this month. We've got information about the HELP grant. We've got just debunking myths. We've got student testimonials talking about their experience of receiving the HELP grant and completing the FAFSA. So check it out. If your students are not going to listen to your announcements, but they'll watch a 2-minute video, we have one that talks about the FAFSA on there. So please utilize this in kind of that promotion, education, and awareness piece. And then actually, Federal Student Aid has some really great videos and resources. They just updated their FSAID video. And so if you want to have your students do their FSAID and parents do it separate from the FAFSA completion event, you can share those out. So we do endorse Federal Student Aid's resources as well. So you may want to check those out. It's linked in the toolkit. And then if you're really wanting to make sure that your parents get the information, you could go old school and snail mail things. If you have the budget or the ability to do so, we have seen it successful where we've got a letter template in the toolkit that you can customize to your date and time of your FAFSA event. And it has all of the information needed to bring to the appointment. It even has at the bottom some of those common myths around the FAFSA. And we've seen that very successful as being mailed home to students, parents. And so they get that information while they may not always get it from the students, or they may not always check their text messages type of thing, but they may open a letter from the school. We also have the same information in a postcard format if that's cheaper for you. So really kind of thinking through all communication channels to get to that education for both students and parents. We have some videos linked within the toolkit that we wanted to highlight for you here, that if you're like, okay, I can read all the words, but I really want to listen, or I want my team to hear about this. There's been interview from Southeast Lauderdale site coordinator and Northeast Rankin talking about, how they build awareness in their CCR classes, but also how they handle that pre-event communication around FAFSA Day, which we know is ultimately so critical. So once you've promoted the event, you've set the date, your team is ready, you've educated your community, it's time to work on booking those appointments. Because remember, we want to offer it in the space of one-on-one, because oftentimes students and families have a lot of questions when it comes to why are y'all needing my tax information, or what exactly financial aid am I going to get from this? And so when you're doing that, thinking about what format you want this to be in, if you want it to be in a large scale event, if you want it to be in the classroom, if you want it to be after hours, virtual, in person. When booking those appointments, determine the format on how you'll record those. You want them to ultimately be one assistant, volunteer, or person trained on how to maneuver the FAFSA to one family. And so maybe that is using signup.com and you control it that way. Maybe it's a Google Doc, maybe it's Calendly, maybe it's old school pen and paper where they call you. Whatever works best for your school and your community, thinking about how you're going to manage that with everyone that's going to be a part of it, working with your teachers, if it's in the classroom, if you're working with community college volunteers, chatting with them, so that way everybody can be on the same page. When you're collecting that information, you obviously want to get the student's name and their contact information. So that way, maybe reminders can be sent out leading up to the event. If there's any changes, if the weather is crazy, you know, we're in hurricane season on the coast in North and Central Mississippi, you know, during the winter, we've had ice and issues. So like there may be changes. So you want to make sure you can communicate that out, but also remind the students. And of course, we know on the FAFSA that you can only use student only or student and biological or adoptive parents. So we've got to have parent info there. The vast majority of high school seniors will require parent info. So we want to make sure we have their name and their contact information, cell phone and email as well. So that way, if you want to send reminders, confirmations, things like that, you have a variety of ways to communicate those. And then when you're making the schedule, plan for that one-on-one assistance, generally about an hour. Maybe your team is like, ooh, I'm not as comfortable with it. So maybe you want to do it in an hour and a half block, or, you know, maybe you want to do where you break it up, where you do the student section in the classroom and walk them through that. But then you have a parent night where you finish the parent section because you can save the FAFSA. You know, again, thinking about what your community needs best, but providing that one-on-one space for them to answer those questions and kind of talk through that. And then there are appointment reminder sheets, both in English and Spanish version in the toolkit, that lists out all of the things that need to be brought to the appointment. Because unfortunately, a family can't just show up with nothing in hand for the FAFSA. There needs to be some documentation around maybe assets, if it's applicable, permanent residency cards, driver's license, tax information if they filed taxes. So all of that's listed on that reminder card that you can use in a digital version or a print version, and share that with student and parents. They both make sure they bring everything, because that's one of the things that can be so frustrating is parents don't show up and you need their info, or B, they show up but they don't have their info and then you've got to reschedule. So setting those appointments up for success is really important. And this is what that page looks like. It can be printed, it can be emailed. You have a variety of formats to use this, but you can see it lists all the information, and then it debunks kind of some of those questions about the FAFSA that parents or supporting family members often have. And this has been updated for the 23-24 FAFSA for the class of 23. All right, so once you are booking the appointment, we've got all of those pieces that are coming together. We want to make sure that we've utilized all of the resources that are there, and then know that if you're ultimately doing it virtually, to keep in mind that you can do a hybrid event. But you want to make sure that you set people up for success. Well, I know that we're probably all ninjas of the Zoom or Teams space. Never assuming is what's going to make your successful FAFSA event. And so making sure if you are, giving the option for parents to Zoom in while the student is in person with the volunteer, that you have just instructions on how to join the meeting and things like that, just because we want to make sure that everyone has access to that. If they're not comfortable with technology, that there's resources shared. So that is available for that instruction sheet as well.
So you have finally come to the big day, and you're a week away or a few days away. And so you want to make sure that you have everything in order. And so you want to make sure that your logistics are ready, you have the rooms reserved, and the appointments, the way you make appointments can really make a huge deal. It can help you tremendously. We use Calendly at Get to College for our appointments, for all of our centers and our trainings in most cases, mainly because there is automatic reminders and replies and text reminders and email reminders. And so think about how you're booking appointments, but not only how are you going to remind those appointments. And so you could call all of your appointments. You could ask one of your team members to call your appointments. There's lots of ways, but you want to make sure leading up to the event that you have appointments and that you are reminding them of what to bring, of when to be there. So make sure that you're doing all of that, so that you're checking your logistics, making sure your volunteers are good to go. And then you're also making sure that your appointments have what they need, and they are making sure that they have the time and know what to bring. Make sure that you have your computers or devices, whether it's Chromebooks within your schools or laptops, whatever that works, or computer labs, and make sure that all the websites are accessible. Kirsten and I have both been in schools where the firewalls were blocking the FAFSA or the Mississippi Aid application. And so just making sure that all the IT is necessary, so that you're on track for all of that. There's also a separate application when you're doing the FSA ID. So not only making sure that student financial aid is available on the website, but also that they can file the FAFSA, that they can create their FSA ID, and that we can get to the Mississippi Aid application. So just double checking all that will make it a lot more successful day when the event comes. And the day has come, you have printed all your copies, you have your FAFSA data sheet or the blue card, you have that printed or you have that in electronic form. You have all the seats set up for volunteers. Remember, they're going to be working with families on very sensitive information and personal information. So you want to make sure that there's enough room for all of them to work independently. You have gone through and touch base with all your FAFSA volunteers, making sure that they're on track. And if you're going to be offering hybrid events, this is what we've seen more of, where, for example, you have the volunteer and the student in person, but let's say the parent is going to have to join via Zoom. That happens a lot because parents have to work, and it's more difficult than ever to get off work these days. And so making sure that you have the necessary technology and arrangements for whatever setup you have, so that you can facilitate the parents, the students, and the volunteer to have a successful FAFSA day. And then don't forget after the FAFSA. So the completing the FAFSA is the first step. That is completing the application. But there are things that will happen after that you want to make sure to follow up on, and definitely have some processes in place. There's going to be most likely some students or parents that did not show, or that were for whatever reason unable to file the FAFSA. Maybe they did not bring all the necessary documentation and they need to reschedule. And so make sure that you're keeping a check of who attended and who didn't, so that you can keep track of all that information while you're going through the FAFSA. Hopefully you have heard about the Mississippi Aid application portal so that you can check who completed the FAFSA and the MAP application. So you can see how to access the MAP counselor portal, and CCR teachers or career coaches, you can get access to the MAP counselor portal. You're just going to have to work with your administrator and Mississippi Aid, but they will be happy to provide you a login so that you can print a list of all your students from your high school that have filed the FAFSA and the Mississippi Aid application. We've already talked about the FAFSA tracker, so you definitely want to be looking at that to track your FAFSA completion numbers. But most importantly, make sure and check the portal because it will give you a list. There could be students that filed the FAFSA that you are not aware of. And so you want to make sure that you're keeping track of all of your students. And there's also ways that you can connect them with Get to College. We offer virtual FAFSA appointments. And so if there is a situation where a family has a difficult circumstance or you're not sure how to handle the FAFSA, make sure that you go to YouTube. They can see our walkthrough videos for FAFSA completion. You could host another FAFSA event, or they can make an appointment with Get to College virtually, and we can help them through that. And then make sure that your FAFSA team is aware of what the steps entail after the FAFSA, because students could be in their classroom or could ask them a question, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware of the answers to those types of questions happening after the FAFSA. And so we have lots of links to help you with navigating verification. We have a FAFSA handout, we have senior timeline documents, and we have ACT resources so that students who need to increase their ACT score can have those resources at hand.
So like Brandy mentioned, the access to that student level data from Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid is really, really critical, to be very honest, to have a successful FAFSA completion strategy at your school. Not all states offer that to their K through 12. And so Mississippi really does a great job of not only making that easily accessible, but also you can see that in the previous slide that the tutorial is linked on how to get access to that. And we really encourage your whole FAFSA team to have access to it, because you'll hear when you watch this that data, you hear from, we interviewed so many different site coordinators around FAFSA completion. The thing that they consistently said was utilizing that Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid data, reconciling that to the roster for the senior class, to the ACT scores, really allows targeting of that information for students. And so making sure those students that could be help eligible, that they've completed it. Making sure that hey, in our class, we're giving a grade for it. This is how we're confirming that type of thing. So we really want to encourage you utilize that. If you have questions on what it looks like, it downloads as an Excel spreadsheet. It's very easy. There's tutorials on the College Countdown YouTube channel that talks about this, but again, we can't talk about it enough without, really making sure that you understand that it is available to you and can make your life so much easier when utilizing it and being strategic with that FAFSA completion. So this is a review of all of the steps. Each one are in folders in a Dropbox that are linked in the toolkit, which you have access to once you register with College Countdown. So you're going to create your FAFSA team. And kind of approach your goal of what your FAFSA completion will be. You're going to set the date and you're going to plan for it accordingly with your team. You're going to do that promotion and education leading up to the event for families and students. You're going to make sure you book appointments, whatever works best in whatever format, whether that is a classroom format, large scale format, virtual, hybrid, in person, kind of whatever your delivery method is there. You're going to host the event, and we know that there's kind of some lead up to it there. And then you're also going to make sure that your students not only have they submitted, but the FAFSA needs to be completed. And oftentimes students need supports around it, whether that's ACT support, to know that there's resources free to them to get that ACT where they need it to be for the scholarships, or they've been selected for verification. The great thing about you having a FAFSA team at your school versus just getting get to college to come in is we're one and done on that day, but your team is there to really support through that verification process, which is where so many students drop out of that, college going process because they don't understand what they're being asked for. And so your team can support that beyond just the FAFSA day. So we're excited to hear those successes. There are some key dates we just want to put on your radar. We have College Application Month here in Mississippi as September. And so while we're talking about FAFSA today, we don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about a lot of times your students need to be admitted to the school before the school ever process their FAFSA. So making sure that they submit their college application, making sure also students know that just because they applied somewhere to a college does not mean that they're committed to go there. Same with sending their FAFSA. Just because they send their FAFSA video doesn't mean that they're committed to go there. Those two things need to be in the system before they even get to the point of getting their financial aid award or knowing what their options are. So application month is currently, deadline is September 15th for the priority deadline for the college countdown, which we know you all are going to meet. We've got Why Apply Day, which is September 16th. So that's a fun day to celebrate applying to college. And then really FAFSA completion is October 1 through March 31st. We've got application data due November the 1st. We've got another College Countdown Toolkit webinar that will be in March to prepare for signing days. Last day of FAFSA challenge is March 31st. And then generally, May 31 is where a lot of National College Decision Day announcements are made. But we know that season is depending on what your school looks like, but it's generally at the end of that school year. So if you have any questions, you can utilize the Q&A feature here in the webinar. Also, Brandy and I are available if you need to ask us something directly via the chat. But if you have any questions, feel free to put those in or reach out to us even after this webinar. We have appreciated you joining us. My name is Kirsten Dufour. My colleague Brandy Lindell are the state coordinators for College Countdown Mississippi, and we are excited that you're joining, and we cannot wait to hear about your FAFSA Day successes over the next year.